Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Day in the Life. I am your co host, Rajiv, and I'm joined by my co host, Priya. Priya, how are you doing?
Thanks, Sajeev. I'm doing well. A podcast recording day is always a good day. And on today's episode, we have with us Reena Dayal, who is the founder and CEO of Quantum Ecosystems and Technology Council of India. She's also a professor of practice at Chandigarh University and active in the Quantum Ecosystem Task Force of the Quad Investors Network. Reena Ma'am has previously been at Microsoft, TCS, was also a member of the governing board of the Cloud Computing Innovation Council of India. So we're super excited to have you here, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. You've had a busy weekend?
Yes, thank you for having me. And yes, this yesterday was Janmashtami, and day before that was Indian Independence Day. So a lot of things to do, lot of celebrations as well.
Fantastic. Really nice to hear that you had a good weekend. Let's maybe get right into it. I want to talk about QETCI. Maybe we could start with what is the story behind you forming QETCI, including your professional journey to that point and how you decided, okay, this is what I want to do.
Okay, yeah. So I'm an electronics engineer by education, and electronics engineering is actually applied physics. And I loved physics when I was studying up to class 12th. And then when there was a time to take a decision, so this was 89 and 1989, and I had to actually decide what I wanted to do. And there was no internet, so your knowledge was limited to the people around you. And I was surrounded by engineers. A lot of people in my family are engineers. So I was a little bit not sure of what I will do with physics. So I ended up being as close to physics as possible, which is electronics engineering. And of course, I worked in the corporate sector for around 30 years. And then in 2018, um, Microsoft was actually working on. I was in Microsoft. Microsoft was working on, is working on quantum, was working on quantum at that time, and I started looking at that, and I realized that all that reading up that I had been doing of physics, because I couldn't study it, so I used to read about physics a lot. Very interested in what's happening in particle physics, what's happening in the theories of the universe, and all of that. So I lapped it all up. And then it suddenly struck me that I could understand what Microsoft was trying to do. And so, start jumped into quantum at that time. And and this is interesting because a lot of people who work in quantum come with a quantum background. I don't. I come from an electronics engineering background. And I started interacting with the ecosystem in India, and I realized that there were pockets of excellence at that time, but there was no coherent effort. So remember, the Indian National Quantum Mission was not announced at that time. And
Right.
it suddenly seemed to me, given my business background, tech background, and a little bit of understanding of geopolitics I had, I felt that if India did not invest in quantum, then it will have a far-reaching impact, right? And that impact would not be a positive one. So I decided that, what can we do? And I started talking to people, and then I realized if something has to be done, maybe I should do something about it. So I left the corporate sector in 2021 and set up this Quantum Ecosystem and Technology Council of India. Interestingly, because when I thought that I need to do something with a couple of other people, like who are my co-founders, we also looked at what other countries are doing. What does
Huh.
it mean to say I want to do something, right? As an independent entity, I don't work with the government, so what could I do? And then we realized that there were examples of lot of entities across the world in different countries. Some of them were public-private partnerships, but there were also private entities or industry forums that were actually catalyzing the quantum ecosystem across the world. So that sort of gave us a little bit of material for a blueprint for QETCI. And
Okay.
2021, QETCI was formed. So that's the history.
Oh, that is something to have that foresight and then to decide and to actually make it happen. But So your job in the domain of quantum technology is quite unique then. What exactly do you do at QETCI and what motivates you to do it?
So QETCI has been evolving, by the way. From 2021 till today, we look very different. But
Okay.
if you look at us, if you ask me what we are, we essentially consider ourselves a catalyst in the ecosystem. And we try to work in those areas which are where there is a need for work to be done. So our mission is to enable and accelerate the quantum ecosystem in India. And then when we were looking at the blueprint, we felt that we should have certain core values associated with us, and one of the values was, of course, to make sure that the nation is a priority, and that's the only that. So whenever in doubt for anything that we are doing, we go back to our mission statement and say, does this align to this, right? So that makes it very simple for us to figure out what we need to do and what we don't need to do.
Right.
The other value which we felt was important was collaboration, both within the ecosystem, but also for India to collaborate internationally in the area of quantum. So that's how we started. We also are a think tank in certain aspects because we make policy recommendations to the governments both at the center and the state level. And in certain ways, we are like industry forums because we have members. So a lot of the quantum startups in India, they are member companies for us, and we take their collective voice to the government in certain very specific scenarios that they are looking at. We also help create market opportunities for them. Now, let me expand a little bit on what I meant by saying that we work on where we find there is a need. So, since we are talking about an evolving ecosystem, it's quantum is pretty new. Every day there is new research happening. There are new opportunities and challenges. Plus, the entire base, the supply chain was pretty much not existing when we started off. Right? There was, or the knowledge of who are the elements of the supply chain was not very known. Right? So, one of the things that we would do is we would look at the ecosystem. We I started talking about it externally. We take a systems approach to how we look at the ecosystem. And we say, okay, let's say, for example, startups. There were around three or four startups at that time when QETCI was formulated. And then we look at that area and we say, but the potential is high. Why? Because I have an intuition which says potential is high. Will the government of India listen to that intuition? No. So the question is, how do I know that there is a potential for quantum startups to formulate even if you put in funding over there? So that's number one. And therefore, we did a hackathon, uh, basically a 3 month incubation effort in 2022 to figure out experimentally as to what is really happening in the ecosystem, what is the potential, who are the people who are likely to step forward if we give them all the resources, right? So we created that environment, got mentors from across the world, uh, got free resources available to people, and see, what will they come up with.
So this is kind of like a way to test that intuition and put it
Yes,
into practice.
yes. And in fact, Priya was part of the winning team there. That's how I got to know Priya.
Oh wow! There you
Yeah.
go.
So, so we took that. There were around 40 sets of people who were able to submit prototypes, and we took that data with all the details of where the people were coming from within India and outside India, and what was the nature of the projects that they were working on. And all that data we took as an input to make the policy recommendations, and the data itself as evidence saying that this is what is telling us that why we need to incentivize startups, even though there are not so many right now, right? So I think that that is what we mean by saying where the problem is. We looked at the startup area as a problem. Now, the second thing, the moment we started having this conversation with the government, it struck us that if you take a systems thinking approach, you know that startups will not survive if there is no market opportunity. So, how do you, and is the market ready? No, it's a new area, market is not ready. So, what do
Right.
you, and like if you look at the technology S curve, which shows adoption, that adoption is pretty slow in the beginning, and then it sort of rises up, right, when the technology starts maturing. Now this is the normal cycle. But when you are in the business of trying to impact the ecosystem, you say, how do I look at speeding this up so that the startups don't hit the valley of death that they typically hit, right? so
Right.
so so the conversations with the end user community started pretty early, and not just directly, but also talking to regulators in the financial sector, talking to the governments at the state level and center level, saying that end user adoption is extremely critical. That's how we will make progress and things like that. So I think this is the way how you look at a whole. You see where all interventions are required. Somewhere we will do experiments, somewhere we'll just make recommendation, find other people who will do certain things. So it is quite a mix of various kind of things that we end up doing. But primarily, you can think of us as a think tank and an industry forum format.
And that's fascinating. I just want to pick up on one aspect because you mentioned very nicely the this hackathon and how you got the startups involved and the people, maybe let's say boots on the ground. But maybe I can ask you, once that happened and you got your results on something you present, how do you even approach the government? How do you start that conversation with them?
Oh, I have in the past not really worked with the government. I was working in the
Right.
corporate sector dealing with international clients. So it was such a pleasant surprise for me. The moment I formulated QETCI, I decided that let me write what I'm planning to the relevant people. So I
Okay.
sent out an email, and it seems very crazy when you think about it like that. I sent an email uh, to the DST secretary,
Right.
to the principal scientific advisor to the government of India, to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, to the chairman ISRO, because there's a very deep connection between quantum and space. So these are the four or five people, and then to Dr. Saraswat in Niti Aayog. And I wrote to all of them saying that I have left the corporate sector because I consider that this is so important for India that we actually, we need to work on this. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Like, people invest in startups when the startup founders are vested in it, right? So
Right.
would you invest in, if you ask a VC, uh, would you invest in the startup if the startup is doing a job as well as the founder is doing a job as well as working on the startup? No, nobody will invest.
Right.
So
Because
this
they're
is
half in,
what
half out.
I was telling them, this is what I'm doing. I left that job, that cushy, high paying job, to do this because I consider it really important, right? And I was not sure what is going to happen. We were organizing we were organizing in partnership with Triple IT, we were organizing a seminar. And we wrote to them and we invite, I said, I'm writing to so many of them, invited them as chief guest, right? Thinking at
And
least
just as
if one of
a
them responds, then, I will
right.
have somebody to, we will have somebody as a chief guest. And
And this is just, sorry, this is just a cold email. Like you
cold,
didn't know them personally or
completely.
anything.
Yes. And
Wow.
none of them
Okay.
knew me. And you won't believe it, in the next few days, of course, the advantage was that the triple IT director was known to them and he
Sure.
was marked on the CC, right? And but I got a response from all of them, and all of them said yes.
Oh,
Wow.
that's
So
That's a
we
nice
had
amazing.
this.
problem to
We had a
have.
1 week long symposium, and we sort of had to figure out who should be placed where, so that we are taking care, giving them the right kind of respect that is there. But it was so motivating for me because it it gave me it made me believe that I may not know how the government works, but there are people who are, I mean, this is how they are responding, right? They're saying that this is important and good, you are doing this, right? So that definitely was motivating, and I think over a period of time I realized that I think this whole belief that used to be there, that the government works in a certain manner. I mean, you'll still find pockets of those, right? But largely, what I found is that if you're doing something good, and there are people out there who also want to do good work, right? So then, just like in the corporate sector, you can collaborate, right? And you can, achieve things faster, right? I think as long as the intent is there. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing story. Yeah.
That's actually quite beautiful. Yeah, I also, in my limited interactions with the Indian government on quantum, I feel that what you said exactly at the end, where if the intent is there, they're very earnest in saying, look, I really want to make something happen for the country, right? So I feel that's really there. Maybe we can go now to a little bit more just the day to day stuff. So, as a fun one, how do you start your day, right? When you wake up in the morning, are there any morning routines that help you prepare for a productive day? Do you kind of wing it or do you have a rigorous system? What's going on
Oh yes,
there?
I have been doing yoga for a really long time. So
Wow.
I do
Okay.
yoga, and it's great for keeping, takes care of exercise in some sense, and also keeps your mind very aligned, right? So that's how it is very useful. I do that. Sometimes I go out for a walk. I try to mix things. If the day I don't do yoga, I will go out for a walk, maybe walk 5 kilometers or do
Oh,
yoga.
wow.
And sometimes, not in this season, in summer I go for swimming, right? So definitely the first thing I do in the morning is to make sure that I'm alert through the day. And for keeping alert through the day, this is the way to make it happen, to do some exercise. Yeah.
No, that's very encouraging that you take time to do it because I know from our interaction that you have pretty crazy days all over. Your routine is always super packed. So this is very cool to know.
Yeah, I do slip once in a while. It's not like, especially when I'm traveling. I don't know. I mean, if you're getting up at 4 a.m. to catch a 6 a.m. flight, then it's kind of tough, Then I just make sure that at the airport, I don't take those travelators.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You walk.
I just walk, yeah.
Okay. And what do you do when you have a bad day at the office? What does a bad day at the office look like for you?
When I have a bad day at the office, or maybe something is not working out for QETCI,
Hmm.
uh, so that would be a bad day, that if something is not working out and I have to figure out what else to be done. Or sometimes people are unreasonable, right? We interact with so many stakeholders, and something doesn't turn out well and all that. So actually I sometimes do go out for a walk in the evening as well, for a
Okay.
shorter duration, so that is helpful. Or I listen to music. So music is very, very, I would say it's mind altering. You can actually change your mood based on the music that you play. And if you know what music changes your mood to what, then you can play around with it and control your mood, right? So I think that is there. Sometimes, and I'm a big science fiction fan. So if there is some nice science fiction stuff on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I will actually watch that to de-stress.
That's nice. Do you have recommendations for us? This is
Oh, right
my
now,
favorite
right
part
now
of it.
I'm actually binging on The Foundation by Isaac Asimov.
Ooh, okay.
A nice
Oh,
one, yeah.
I've read the series. I didn't know that there was also
I
something
also,
on.
until recently, I did not know,
Okay,
but I
okay,
think the book is always better.
okay. Yeah, I think I also fall in that camp. Okay, that's very cool.
but I wanted to ask in that regard as well. So you, again, as Priya mentioned, like your days are packed, they're busy, but you somehow like you not only you find the time to kind of do the morning routines or when the day doesn't go as well, you do what you have to do, but you somehow don't fall into this pressure of like, oh no, this is kind of like a waste of time, right? To do these other things other than work. Like, do you ever feel a little bit that way, or no? This has always been something since the beginning. You've been very clear that like these are important in life, right, and for your mental health.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like that
Okay.
when I was in the corporate sector. Everything, which did not contribute directly to few goals in my career or my home, anything apart from that used to be like a waste of time. But over a period of time, I've learned, I think this is the beauty of growing older, spending more years on the planet. When you start realizing that, number of years you spent may not be as many left now, or who knows how many are left. So at that point in time, you start realizing that it's important to chill and to enjoy and to do things. And by the way, if you do that, actually you are more productive for whatever hours you put in. I actually accomplish a lot more in QETCI than I used to do in the corporate sector, with
Okay.
because I'm very focused when I'm working. Yeah.
That's a really interesting to hear. And on a personal note, like actually, it's something that in the last couple of months I've been talking to my therapist about, and it's exactly this topic of exactly like you say at the end as well. That hey, in the time, not only is it better for you, but in the time that you are working, it can also boost that productivity. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's actually I really like that conversation. Um, Now maybe we can go back a little bit to the ecosystem aspect. So you've already talked a little bit about how your interactions with the government have been and how your positive experiences have been. Maybe I can ask you now, what do you feel are some roadblocks or challenges to grow the quantum ecosystem in India? And then also, despite these roadblocks, how do you see the positivity in it, or how do you personally stay positive about it all?
So I think one of the biggest roadblocks in India is that we've not had a very good history of research collaborating with the industry, and it's
Okay,
changing gradually, but the roots are not very strong. So when we started off, we were very struck by the fact. I was very struck by the fact that there is not much trust in each other, and that comes from not having done a lot of significant work together. Whereas quantum requires research to commercialization. In that process, it requires collaboration between the two in a very, very deep manner.
absolutely.
And this is something which we started pointing out pretty early. And not only that, I think it's very positive because if you look at the National Quantum Mission and the way it is worded and the goals that have been given to the 40 hubs that are there, is that they are supposed to do research because this is all money for the academicians and the researchers, but the goals that they have been given are goals for products. So this is sort of forcing that, right? And that's very positive. And so I think not only have people understood that this challenge needs to be addressed, and I would say that we are not the only one who gave those inputs, but a lot of people had given those inputs, and we had also given input saying that we need to solve this problem of the gap that exists between research to commercialization, and how do we also get startups more involved, how do we encourage more startups, and how do we get the industry more involved. And at the back end, there are also a lot of strengthening that is now happening for how IP needs to be treated within each of these institutes. And there is cross institute learning also that is happening. For example, if you look at triple IT, not triple IT, IIT Madras. IIT Madras has a very strong base of actually have done this successfully time and time again, right? So there are many startups which have come out of IIT Madras, which are deep tech startups, and now you can see the same model being followed in IIT, or similar model, or a very strong model being followed in IIT Mumbai, and IIT Delhi and other places as well, right? So I think uh, that development, as well as the kind of goals that the National Quantum Mission has given, there is an attempt to bridge this gap. So that makes me hopeful. But I often, I think people will find it strange, but I often come across this situation where I will have somebody from the academia who will be cribbing about the industry, and then in another room there'll be somebody from the industry who will be cribbing about the academicians, right? And all I do is hear. I can because I can't take sides, right? My job is to make sure that at the end, the best thing is if everybody works in harmony, right? So that's what it
Right.
is. Yeah.
And so you say that you see that it's happening more often now, or now they're almost being forced to do it because of how the quantum mission has been designed.
No, I think systemically, from a systems perspective, the right conditions are coming in place for this to work out. That's the governance part of it. But culture also is a part, right? So culture changes more slowly. Governance has been brought in. The culture will take a little bit longer to change. It will change through experience, right? So we are still in that phase where we're getting better, but we have definitely not at par with how the West deals with the industry academia collaboration, right? But we will be there based on how the progress is happening. So I do
So
come
can
across
I?
it. If to answer your question, Priya, I do come across this, but it will change for sure.
So then, can I ask you more specifically, and maybe even just beyond this industry academia collaboration, what are your hopes for the National Quantum Mission, short term, mid term, and long term? If you can give us like one each.
So the National Quantum Mission has set certain targets for computing, for communication, for sensing. I'm pretty sure these T hubs will overshoot those.
Wow.
They will definitely meet those targets and overshoot. There has been very rapid progress in the way research has happened in India. There is also a lot of progress. I mean, I talked about three or four startups in 21. Now there are 60 plus startups in India. So the number is very promising. And more importantly, in the last 2 years, the number of startups who've got VC funding, seed, pre-series A, series A has really shot up. And very recently, there was a 32 million series A round that was closed by one of the
Wow.
startups. So that 32 million series A round is at par with the rest of the world, right? But you are
Right.
working out of
Exactly.
India, so that's more. You're working out of India in rupees. So that's a pretty big thing, actually. That means that the confidence in the Indian startups and therefore in the ecosystem is increasing very rapidly, right? That's a very good sign.
What's something you think we can do better, or something that we haven't started yet that needs some more work on?
I think not started. I think we're doing work in materials, but I think the materials focused startups, we need to have more of those. And we need to have uh, we also need to increase the number of startups in quantum sensors. We already have startups in India which are on the computing side, which are focused on uh, both photonics based computing as well as superconducting qubits. Maybe we should have a couple of more startups which are looking at some other options as well. I think that would be great. I'm not saying it's a problem, but these are all the wish list so that progress can be faster. There can be more competition in the ecosystem and more opportunity.
Very
And
nice.
just
Well,
oh, I have
please go
just
ahead.
one last follow
Go
up
ahead. Go
to that.
ahead.
So when we're talking about, so yeah, we have superconducting qubits and photonics in terms of computing, and to have startups in other qubit modalities would also be nice. But do you think that this comes from established academic labs who are doing work in other qubits, or
Uh, it could come from anywhere. These two startups, one of them is partnering very closely with certain institutes, and the other was more industry led, right? But both were started off industry led because investment in computing is a big decision. You need seasoned founders, you need people who are willing to take very high risk and who have a lot of belief in themselves to start a quantum computing startup,
Right.
because it's a long journey, right? And you have to take on, who's your competition? Your competition is going to be the some of the biggest companies in the world, right? So it's not easy. Unless there is somebody like that in the team, I find that getting this initiated through the academia is going to be very tough. In all other areas it seems possible, but in this area, it in India especially, it does not seem possible that the origin will be from the academia. Definitely, it can
Interesting.
originate from there. The research can be from there, but at least one of the first founders, the first level founders, has to be somebody who has industry experience and who is willing to take that kind of risk.
Okay, yeah, that's good insight.
That's very interesting. Um, Now on to actually kind of a fun question, just to get to know you a little bit better. But if you could have dinner with anyone at all, living, dead, or famous or not, who would it be, and maybe why?
I really thought about this question. It is such a tough question. I want to have dinner with so many people, but but I think Richard Feynman.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty standard answer. Do you have any? What would be? Maybe have you thought about which pressing questions you would like to ask, or what you would like to learn in that dinner?
Yeah, so I would love to understand from him that when he thought of a quantum computer, because he's the one who first visualized it, what did he have in mind? And then compare that to what we are working towards today and see,
Ah,
if there are certain insights to be gleaned from that.
I like that answer a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't also mind having dinner with him. Can try and do it together if you find a way.
We could have him on the podcast, maybe. Like do another one of these.
Hey, with the advancement of AI, you never know, right?
We have
That's a
the
whole other
virtual
topic.
Richard
Yeah.
Feynman. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think you've already spoken a little bit about having a balance between your personal life and professional life. Um, and I think culturally in India we're a bit more. We work a lot harder. For me, having come and now I'm studying abroad, but I see that marked difference. Um, do you have any particular advice for people who should start prioritizing also their health and personal life? How does one go from being completely obsessed and stressed about work all the time to bringing about a bit more balance in their lives?
So unfortunately, we all learn from experience because everybody's parents tells them that you exercise and you take care of yourself, but we think we are too smart when we are very busy and all of that. So you learn your own way. But the reality is that the moment we make time for ourselves, and if we make it a habit right from early on, the more we are able to create time for other things. And because you need a sharp mind and a body that supports all this crazy work that you do, like number of hours sometimes you have to spend and things like that. So that is the first thing. You have to take care of yourself first, and that means you take care of your physical health, your mental health, which is not very often talked about in India, right? But it is important to, and I think if even if people don't talk about it, yoga is great for that, right? Because it synchronizes you in a very different way. So maybe just do that, and also your emotional and spiritual health. I mean, for me, spiritual health is important. If I'm calm and I feel connected to I'm not religious in the typical sense, but I'm religious. So if I feel connected to God, I feel everything is possible. So that's very important for me. So I feel that that is something which is important. When it comes to balance, there is no balance. There is never work life balance. You can only prioritize at every stage, and something gets neglected because there are only 24 hours in the day.
Right.
And what we have to learn is to deal with that without guilt and accept it and say, this is my plan and this is what I will do. And I will right now prioritize this. And I know something is going to give way a little bit, but I'm going to jump back right at that because I have kept space for that in my schedule, right? So there is no balance. And if people seek balance, that's when you get really you get really worked up, you get very upset, you will have guilt. And I have gone through all of those stages at some point in
Okay.
time. But thankfully, this is something I learned very early on, that there is no balance and you just need to have a plan. And so applying my engineering there as well, right? Just have a plan and work through it, and things will, you'll find a way. Yeah.
think that's a relief. We don't have to have balance, but yeah.
No,
No,
you
I
strive for
understand
balance,
to
but
have
you
that
cannot
awareness.
have perfect balance and accept
Yeah.
that, right? Acceptance is a big thing, right? To be able to accept a situation that you know that it's not going
Right.
to get balanced. And you will be, people will make you feel guilty, you will feel guilty. So, can I get rid of that guilt, right? Saying,
I
when you
see.
have a small kid, for women especially, this
Hmm.
becomes a very bad situation, right? I mean, somebody else will have, especially in India, people will have a lot of things to say about how much time you're spending where, right? So, but then you have to deal with it. They're not coming to deal with it for you, right? So,
Right. Well, absolutely. I think on that fantastic note, we're going to go towards our game, which also is not about balancing, actually, but about making hard choices. So we're going to go with slice it up and spice it up. So this is a game inspired by the hip hop podcast Drink Champs. So I will be asking a series of like whether to choose A or B, and you could choose A or B, or you could choose neither or both. But if you choose neither or both, then you have to take uh, bite into or take something a little bit spicy. So maybe we start by I don't know showing off what we have. I think for me this week it's a little bit standard. I have my Tabasco sauce, so I'll just be taking a little spoonful of that. Happy for both of you to share what you've brought on the podcast today.
I've also got hot sauce. It's just standard what you get at the supermarket here.
I used to use something like that to wake up when I was in college, when I had to get up at 2 a.m. to study for an exam or something.
Oh wow.
So it was not coffee; it was hot sauce.
No, because coffee would not work as well, something like this would jolt you up, right? Like, so you don't feel sleepy after that.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's hilarious. And Serena, what do you have today?
Okay, so I have something very different. Yesterday was Janmashtami in India, and I had kept a fast. So in fasting, you make food differently. So this is a sabudana vada. So I have a bowl full of
Wow.
sabudana vadas, but because you can't put any normal masala or spices into it, you end up putting a lot of green chilies into it just to sort of
Man,
make it. So while yesterday it was, and then you can't have too much of it because it's very spicy. So this is my spicy.
that might be the most original one we've had on the podcast
Yeah,
so far, I think.
that's
So
true.
I'm excited for this one. All right, let's get it going. So the first question is CV Raman or Satyendranath Bose?
Satyendranath Bose.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. How come?
Bose-Einstein equation. I'm just fascinated by that. I think
Wow,
there
that
are
was
only
very clear
some
from
things.
you.
I think there are only some. I feel that this equation has some other implications about the universe which we have not yet explored. So,
Wow. Okay, that was very clear. Um, next one, it's actually a choice of three, so it's a bit harder. But quantum communication, quantum sensing, or quantum computing?
quantum sensing.
Okay, that
Love
was
it.
interesting. How come?
Quantum sensing because so it's an answer that I've given today. This answer may change some other time, but
Sure.
right now I'm very focused on that, doing a lot of things in that space, and I believe that the number of industries and applications and the type of applications that quantum sensors are going to bring in is just phenomenal, right? So I'm very fascinated by it right now.
Okay. Wow. This is proving tough for the host this time. This game. Okay.
Hey, it's a good
So
thing.
yeah. Priya, I want to see Priya eat more spicy food. Actually, that's why it's tough for me. Um, so the next question is quantum computing for material science or quantum computing for the finance industry?
Actually, here I would say both.
Oh,
Let's go. All right. I guess we'll
let's do
So
it.
we
take a
all
bite
have
or
to
a
have
sip
something
of what we
spicy
had.
now.
Sorry.
We all have to have something spicy now.
Yes,
Yes, that's
that's the
the rule.
unfortunate.
We
Okay.
all have to.
Oh,
So that was the first tough one for you, I guess.
Mhm.
Oof. Are there any others that you see? Because I just threw those two in there. Is this a both, as in those are the top two, or do you feel like there are also, other contestants in terms of these use cases for quantum computing?
Oh, there are so many, but these two areas both need a lot of focus, right? So I felt that I can't choose between the two. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, the next one is quantum hardware or quantum software.
Quantum hardware.
Okay.
Okay.
Most of the
And can you
quantum
tell us a
is,
little bit more about why?
yeah, because there's already a lot of focus on the software side, and
Okay.
even before the hardware is there. So for now, I would think let's focus on the hardware a little bit more, and especially for India, we need more hardware focus so that we don't get into that trap of us being a software focused country. So it's very easy to
I
fall into
see.
that trap,
Interesting.
right? We will anyway end up doing software. We know that, right? Because we are some of the world's largest system integrators. IT system integrators are based out of India. So that's why.
That's such a I don't know, such a positive take. I like that a lot. Um, okay, is physics invented or is physics discovered?
Both.
Both.
Oh no.
All right.
Maybe I'm just hungry.
Yeah, you're the one that has the nice thing to eat.
I think we have one more question then.
Oh yeah. This is one we ask every guest. Um, if you had to choose one qubit modality to put your money on, which one would it be?
That's a really tough one.
We won't hold you to it.
You guys do know I've already invested in a photonics based quantum computing startup, right?
There you go.
That's the one. It's photonics.
No,
That
no.
was
Actually,
simple.
I would say I can't say. If you really
No,
ask me, I can't.
Oh, yes.
it was going so well.
We left the toughest for the end.
Okay, then we have to do another
And
one.
that
The
was
last.
your question as well, so you only have yourself to blame.
Yeah.
Okay, I am also glad. I'm actually glad that this game is over because I don't know how much more I could have taken.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but on that note, ma'am, the last question, which also we ask our guests, is if you have any advice for people watching, typically students, professionals, but I want to be more specific with my question because you're somebody that works in between a lot of domains and in with a lot of different kind of people on problems that are not straightforward. They're neither technical, non-technical, different stakeholders. So how does one develop this ability to interface so easily with all of these different people and domains and speak different languages like that?
Oh yeah. So that's a very specific question. So I'll answer that. I think in order to relate with people and to actually work with people who may have very different skills, you need to understand a little bit of what they are doing. You need not be an expert, but you do need to understand a little bit. And typically, what happens is every time there is innovation happening, like for example, I'll give you a very different example from quantum. Several years ago, when there was uh, AI was just starting off at that time. I'm talking about 15 years ago, when data science had suddenly become very interesting in the ecosystem. People who had studied statistics were trying to get into saying, how can we use data science for solving problems, right? And predictive analytics and those kind of things were coming into the play. And we were still not calling it AI, by the way. We were saying machine learning. How can we do a little bit of machine learning and a little bit of something else and statistical analysis, and how can we, weave a story together with that. So the people who came from the statistics side sometimes had zero clue about programming, whereas the
Oh.
programmers did not understand what they were talking about. And the first few conversations on the ground, because I had teams like that, was so tough, right? Just to make people understand the value of each other, and also in terms of how do you work together.
Hmm.
The same happens if you look at design. Today, you cannot do any hardware, anything that faces a customer. You cannot do it without having people who have an experience in design. If you talk to engineers, engineers will think design is nothing. I will create the system and it is usable. But actually, that's not true. And so, again, that's because people cannot talk to each other. So, my advice to people actually is that apart from these very well laid out curriculums that we study, we should always try to study something which is removed from that, which opens up our minds to something totally different, right? Even when I was getting into the first year of QETCI, I actually did a course on computational social science, which is completely different. And that's because you were saying technology is going to impact society. How does it impact society? How do you even look at what impacts society, and how is there a scientific way to do it? And then I realized, oh, there was a subject called computational social science that really takes you through understanding how societies are impacted through changes, right? So, and technology change is another kind of change, right? So, I feel that this continuous learning is extremely important, and we should always focus on fundamental skills, not derived skills.
Hmm.
So, programming is a derived skill, by the way. Whereas
In
an
what sense?
understanding of how a computer works is a fundamental skill.
Ah, got you.
Because if I want to teach somebody programming, I can take somebody who is a non engineer and teach them programming.
Right.
And then you are competing on domain. Now, if I take a doctor and teach them programming, between an engineer and the doctor is better off working on a solution for healthcare because he
Right.
understands the domain. Whereas you are an engineer, you've left your engineering behind and you are focusing on the language. And that's just a language. And you can learn one language, two language, three languages, but that's not your differentiator. Most people tend to forget this,
Hmm.
and they run after these things because for short term in your career there may be certain things which will be very high, paying you a lot, but the question that you ask is, how will this impact me in the long term? Will it create a base for me which is strong enough for me to survive irrespective of all these, today's trend, tomorrow's trend, day after tomorrow's trend? They can all keep coming and going, but do I have something which is strong enough, which is going to anchor me in any ways? With the kind of layoffs etc that are happening right now, and the kind of uncertainty that is there, I think it is even more important for people to understand this difference between core skills versus derived skills and actually focus on the core skills.
That's a good question to ask ourselves and to reflect on. On that note, thank you so much for doing this with us. I'd like to quickly shout out the podcast that QETCI does that you should totally check out. Quantum Pulse, it's called. You've already had a bunch of sessions on healthcare and education and different domains within quantum. So definitely check that out. We will put that in our description. QETCI is always doing a lot of other cool stuff. Reena ma'am, if you want to quickly say a few things about what currently you're working on.
Also, something interesting that we are working on right now, we are doing a project with CSIRO in Australia. This is an Australia India joint project, and ISB is also a partner for us. And the project is on creating a framework for responsible quantum in the APAC region. So it's pretty interesting. It's in the think tank research domain that I talked about. And yeah, so we should see something come out next year.
Awesome.
Till
Yeah.
next
Stay
year.
tuned for that. And so thank you again so much, Reena, for taking the time to come on our podcast. As usual, the music you're hearing right now is by Himanshu Katara. And we will see you all in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.